6 months. 6 long, grueling months of therapy, paperwork nightmares, and endless waiting for a single package. My custom medical equipment wasn't just a convenience, it was a lifeline. Every morning, I woke up aching. Every night I fell asleep with the same gnawing frustration. Why does healing always feel like a battle? And yet, today was different. The delivery company had called that morning to confirm it was coming today. Relief crashed over me, a tidal wave I hadn't felt in months. Oak Ridge Estates looked perfect from my living room window. Manicured lawns stretched like green carpets, the mailboxes all matched, and the white picket fences gleamed in the sunlight. But perfection, I'd learned, was a lie here. Behind these flawless facades lurked Karen Wilkins, the HOA president, a woman who ruled this neighborhood like a queen with a clipboard instead of a crown. Karen was in her 50s, with a sharp blonde bob and a wardrobe that screamed executive power. But it wasn't just her appearance, it was her attitude. She walked Oak Ridge Estates like she owned it, inspecting lawns and mailboxes with a scowl that could curdle milk. Everyone knew her. Everyone feared her. And today, I was about to meet the full force of her tyranny. Around noon, the delivery truck rolled into view. I pressed my hands to the window, heart pounding, eyes locked on the driver as he grabbed his clipboard and headed toward my door. For a brief moment, I let myself imagine finally opening the box, touching the equipment I'd waited half a year for, feeling the first real step toward recovery. Then I saw her, Karen, storming across my lawn with purpose, clipboard in hand, her expression one of sheer indignation. "Excuse me," she barked at the delivery driver, her voice sharp and icy. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" The young man, barely in his 20s, blinked at her like he'd just been shot with confounding question. Delivering a package to this address," he said, pointing toward my house. I hurried outside, taking each step carefully, the pain in my leg a constant reminder of why I needed this equipment. "Hi," I said, forcing a polite smile. "I'm the homeowner. That package is for me." Karen didn't flinch. Instead, she planted herself squarely between me and the driver. "I'm Karen Wilkins, president of the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association," she announced, each syllable dripping with self-importance. "And we have very strict rules about deliveries in this neighborhood." My blood pressure spiked. "Karen," I said through gritted teeth, "this is medical equipment. I've been waiting 6 months. It's approved by my insurance. I need it today." She looked me up and down, her eyes narrowing with the precision of a hawk. "Finally, you should have filed a delivery request form with the HOA board 2 weeks in advance. Section 23, paragraph 4 of the bylaws." She tapped her clipboard as if invoking some sacred law. The driver shifted uneasily. "I just need someone to sign for it so I can move on." Karen's smile appeared but didn't reach her eyes. "Don't worry, I'll handle it. You can leave it with me as the HOA representative. I'll make sure it's properly processed." "Absolutely not." I snapped, stepping forward despite the pain in my leg. "This is my equipment. I need it now." Karen's expression hardened. "Perhaps you should have followed the rules." "They exist for a reason," she said, voice sweet but laced with condescension. Before I could react, she snatched the driver's tablet from his hands. "As the neighborhood representative," she said, standing taller, "I'm confiscating this package. It will be held at the community center until proper paperwork is filed." I stared at her, stunned. "Karen, that's theft. You have no right to take my property." Her laugh was short, dismissive, almost gleeful. "It's not theft. It's enforcement of community standards. You'll get your package once you complete the necessary forms and pay the $200 rush delivery fee." The driver looked helpless, clearly unsure what to do. I can't just give it to someone else," he pleaded. Karen's tone turned icy. "Young man, do you want me to call your supervisor? I'm sure they'd love to hear how you're disrupting our peaceful community with unauthorized deliveries." I pulled out my phone. "Karen, step aside. Now, this is my property, my delivery, my address. I'm calling the police." She rolled her eyes. "Go ahead. My husband plays golf with the police chief. They understand the importance of maintaining standards." I dialed 911, my hand shaking, not from fear, but from sheer disbelief. "Yes," I said, steadying my voice. "Someone is attempting to steal my medical equipment." Unbelievably, Karen convinced the driver to place the equipment in the back of her SUV. Before I knew it, she was driving off, smug and triumphant. "You'll get it back once you learn to follow the rules," she shouted over her shoulder. I was left standing in my driveway, stunned, phone in hand, staring after her. The relief of finally getting my equipment was replaced by anger and panic. She actually stole it. 20 minutes later, 2 police cruisers pulled up. Detective Rodriguez and his partner emerged, listening intently as I recounted the incident. By the time they called Karen's bluff and traced her SUV, the tone had shifted. She wasn't untouchable. The first step toward justice had begun. The sun was still high when Detective Rodriguez knocked on my front door. Relief surged through me. Finally, someone in authority was taking this seriously. He was a tall man in his 40s, dark hair streaked with gray, a badge gleaming on his chest. His partner, a younger officer, stood nearby, notebook in hand. "Detective Rodriguez," he said, extending a firm hand. "We got your call about the stolen medical equipment." "Yes," I said, trying to calm my racing heart. "It's all here on my phone, the delivery confirmation, tracking number, insurance approval, everything." He nodded, flipping open his notebook, and she just drove off with it. I swallowed hard. Yes, she's the HOA president, Karen Wilkins. She literally confiscated my medical equipment, saying I had to file a request form and pay a rush fee. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. She knew it was medical equipment and still took it. "Yes, and she was smug about it. Told me I'd get it back once I learned to respect the rules." He shook his head slowly. "People like her get drunk on the tiniest bit of power. But taking someone's medical equipment, that's beyond petty. That's criminal." The officers took statements, asked questions, and I gave them every detail I could remember. The route Karen took, the SUV she drove, even the way she glanced at the driver with that smug smile. Then came the call that made my pulse spike. Nearby units were heading straight to Karen's address. I watched from the porch as officers fanned out along her street. Moments later, Karen's SUV pulled into her driveway. She stepped out, looking perfectly composed at first, but her expression faltered as she realized the police were there for her. "Karen Wilkins." Rodriguez called. "We're here regarding a stolen property report. Step aside." For the first time, her confidence wavered. She opened her mouth, like to protest, but words failed her. Officers approached, gently but firmly securing her while explaining the seriousness of the charge. Grand theft of medical equipment. I felt a mix of relief and disbelief. The same woman who had terrorized the neighborhood for years, the queen of Oak Ridge Estates, was finally facing consequences. As the police escorted her SUV back toward the recovery area, my neighbors began to emerge from their houses. Whispers rippled through the cul-de-sac. Windows cracked open, doors opened, and a few brave souls stepped outside. Ted, the HOA vice president, approached cautiously. "Is it true?" he asked, voice low. "Karen, arrested." "Yes," I said, still half in disbelief. "She tried to take my medical equipment, and now the police are handling it." Ted whistled. "I've been on the board a long time, and no one has ever crossed a line like that. Not like this. This is beyond HOA drama." Detective Rodriguez returned, holding the recovered package. "We've got it back," he said, placing the equipment gently on my porch. She was cooperative only after understanding the severity. Grand theft of medical equipment is a serious felony. Depending on your state, she's looking at years in prison and hefty fines. I felt tears of relief welling up. Months of waiting, of pain, of struggle. It was finally over. My equipment was back where it belonged. I opened the box, carefully inspecting it, making sure nothing had been tampered with. Everything was perfect. Over the next few hours, word spread like wildfire through Oak Ridge Estates. Social media posts, texts, and phone calls lit up my phone. Every neighbor had heard what happened. The HOA board scheduled an emergency meeting announcing a leadership transition, and without naming names, an unfortunate incident involving the former president. By the next morning, the neighborhood felt different. Freed from Karen's iron grip, there was a sense of collective relief. Mowers hummed, sprinklers sprayed, and people greeted each other without the tension that had lingered for years. But Karen's story wasn't over. A few days later, her husband dropped her off at home after being released on bail. She looked nothing like the queen who had stormed across my lawn. Her perfectly styled ball was in disarray, her designer clothes replaced with rumpled sweats, and mascara streaked down her cheeks. She tried to avoid eye contact, but our eyes met for a fraction of a second. The shock, the humiliation, it was all written across her face. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, trying to get a glimpse. Some pretended to water their lawns, others checked their mailboxes. Everyone was watching. Karen hurried inside, slamming the door behind her. Meanwhile, I began receiving calls from friends and neighbors, each one asking the same question. Did she really steal your medical equipment? I confirmed it, and the relief in their voices matched my own. For the first time in years, it felt like Oak Ridge Estates belonged to its residents, not to a self-appointed ruler. As the week progressed, Karen's case moved through the legal system. The HOA board officially removed her as president and voted to levy fines, the maximum allowed under the bylaws, to hold her accountable for her actions. Through it all, I reflected on how easy it had been for one person to abuse power. Karen had manipulated rules, scared delivery drivers, and even tried to leverage personal connections with the police. But she had underestimated justice, and her reign of terror finally met a wall it couldn't bend. Yet, the tension lingered. Karen was still out on bail, and I knew she wouldn't go quietly. My heart pounded every time I heard a car on the street, every time the mailman rang the doorbell. There was a lingering question: what would she do next? I knew the answer would come soon enough. Because in Oak Ridge Estates, no one forgets, and karma, it seemed, was only getting started. The days following Karen's arrest were surreal. Oak Ridge Estates had finally caught a glimpse of what life could be like without her iron-fisted rule, but her shadow still loomed. She was out on bail, and rumors swirled like wildfire. Every glance out the window, every passing car made me flinch. Yet, beneath the tension, a quiet satisfaction grew, because justice was finally catching up to the woman who had made everyone's life miserable. The courtroom was packed on the day of her hearing. I arrived early, clutching the papers proving my ownership of the medical equipment, delivery confirmations, insurance approvals, and even the HOA bylaws that Karen had twisted to justify her theft. The air was thick with anticipation, neighbors murmuring behind me. Everyone had heard about her antics, and today they were going to see her face the consequences. Karen entered, attempting the same composed, regal demeanor she had always worn like armor. Her blonde bob was perfectly styled, her outfit immaculate, as if nothing had happened. But there was a tremor in her step, a faint shadow behind her confident smile. The reality of facing the law, and a judge who did not bend for entitled HOA presidents, was sinking in. The judge, a stern woman with steel-gray eyes, scanned the courtroom. Papers shuffled. Karen's lawyer muttered something about a misunderstanding. But the judge didn't even glance at him. She wanted the facts, and the facts were damning. Ms. Wilkins, the judge began, voice cold and precise, you are charged with grand theft of medical equipment. You knowingly took property that did not belong to you, causing distress and potential harm to the rightful owner. Karen opened her mouth, as if to protest, but the courtroom fell silent. Every eye was on her. The judge continued, methodically laying out the evidence, the delivery logs, the driver's testimony, and my detailed statements. Each piece painted the same picture. Karen had abused her position, taken property she knew was not hers, and flaunted the law in the process. Her lawyer tried again, invoking obscure HOA rules and claiming she misunderstood the procedures. The judge raised a hand. The law is clear, she said. There are no HOA bylaws that allow you to steal medical equipment. None. Your role does not place you above the law. For the first time, Karen's perfect facade cracked. Her mouth trembled, eyes widening as a weight of reality hit her. She glanced around the room, perhaps expecting support from neighbors, but all she found was stares of disbelief, disappointment, and, finally, judgment. The verdict was swift. She was sentenced to 18 months probation, fined $7,000, and ordered to complete 200 hours of community service at a medical equipment distribution center, helping low-income patients access the very devices she had tried to steal. The irony was bitter, almost poetic. Karen Wilkins, once the ruler of Oak Ridge Estates, now serving those in need of the equipment she had hoarded for herself. The courtroom echoed with her cries. "But I was just enforcing the rules," she wailed, mascara streaking her cheeks. The judge didn't flinch, moving on to the next case as Karen's sobs filled the room. As I left the courtroom, a sense of profound relief settled over me. For the first time in months, I felt vindicated. Every moment of anxiety, every pang of frustration, had led to this moment of justice. Karen's reign of terror had ended, and the neighborhood breathed easier. Back home, life slowly returned to normal. My medical equipment was fully set up, ready for use. Every time I adjusted it or began a therapy session, I felt a quiet triumph, not just for myself, but for everyone who had suffered under Karen's petty rule. Oak Ridge Estates was reclaiming its peace. Neighbors began greeting me with smiles, sharing stories of how they had been inspired to stand up against a tyranny in small ways, refusing unfair fines, documenting HOA overreach, and simply speaking the truth. Ted, the HOA vice president, stopped by one afternoon, handing over a stack of newly drafted community rules designed to prevent another Karen Wilkins from ever rising to power. "She's been removed," Ted said with a grin. The board voted unanimously, and the bylaws now include protections for residents against abuse of authority. No one can touch property without consent, period. I smiled, thinking back to the moment Karen had driven off with my equipment. The panic, the disbelief, the helplessness, it all seemed distant now, like a bad dream. And yet, the lessons lingered. Power is dangerous when wielded without accountability. Justice may take time, but it comes eventually. And when it does, it lands harder than anyone expects. Weeks later, I saw Karen briefly at the end of the street, carrying a box of equipment for her community service hours. Her posture was rigid, her face pale and expressionless. No scowl, no smugness, no royal air, just a woman humbled by the consequences of her actions. The neighborhood watched silently. Oak Ridge Estates had witnessed the fall of its self-proclaimed queen. As I closed my front door that evening, adjusting the equipment for the first time in peace, a smile crept across my face. The rules, once wielded as a weapon against me, had finally worked against the person who thought she was above them all. And for the first time in years, the neighborhood felt truly safe, truly calm. The lawns still gleamed, the mailboxes still matched, but now they belonged to all of us, not to one woman's twisted vision of control. I sank into my chair, letting the tension melt away. Healing could finally begin, not just physical healing, but the kind that comes from justice, closure, and finally reclaiming your life. For Karen Wilkins, the lesson was bitter and unforgettable. For the rest of us, it was a reminder that power is never absolute, rules exist for everyone, and karma, in its own way, always finds a way to even the score.